Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome dear learners. This is a video for the subject of education for the course of Bachelors of Education and for the paper of Educational Technology. This lecture is based on teaching learning strategies and materials, and here we are going to discuss about the flipped learning and flipped classroom. This video lecture is recorded by Dr. Iram Khan. The course coordinator and the presenter of this video is Dr. Iram Khan from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. The academic expert or the reviewer of this video is Professor Jasim Ahmed from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. This video is produced under the project DTH Swayam Prabha Channels of Ministry of Education, Government of India. Hello dear students, I am Dr. Iram Khan, Assistant Professor at Institute of Advanced Studies in Education, Faculty of Education, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Today we will be discussing on the teaching learning strategies and materials, and the topic of today will be based on the flipped classroom or the flipped learning style. The objectives of this session are to discuss the meaning and definition of flipped learning and flipped classroom, to elaborate the steps of implementing a flipped classroom, and to describe the strategies used in a flipped classroom. First, the point is that what exactly is the meaning of flipped learning? Flipped learning is a pedagogical approach in which direct instruction moves from one group of learning or from the group of learning space to the individual learning space, and the resulting group space is transformed into a dynamic, interactive learning environment where the educator or the person who is basically guiding the students in the way in which they apply the concepts and engage creativity in the subject matter. Basically, they all are involved in the process of guiding the students. So this entire interactive learning environment is responsible for making the learning process happen. And whenever we talk about flipped learning, there is a kind of scenario which comes into our mind that somehow things are flipped or things are reversed. So if we try to define in a very simplistic manner, we can say that schoolwork at home and homework at school. This is somehow what exactly we have learned about flipped learning from ages. So flipped learning is an approach that allows the teachers to implement a methodology or various type of methodologies in their classrooms where they are in a position to manage the classroom in their own way. If they are willing to give some sort of homework in the beginning, they will be in a position to give. And those things which the students were supposed to do at home earlier, that can be done at the school. So that type of things are going to happen whenever we are following the flipped learning style. In this session, we will be making it very much clear that what exactly is a flipped learning approach or a flipped classroom, and there will be a demystification of this entire concept and how we have to go ahead if we try to flip a classroom in a traditional learning system or in a normal school. Now there is a point that whether the terms flipped learning and flipped classroom, they are synonymous or they are having different meanings. Basically, how we can make a distinction between the flipped classroom and flipped learning, we just are going to take a look on. These terms are not interchangeable. This is something which you have to understand very well, that the both terms, flipped learning and flipped classroom, they are not synonymous or they are not interchangeable. Flipping a class can but not necessarily lead to flipped learning. And many teachers may already flip their classes by having students uh, like making the students to read, or you can say that providing them some text material or some sort of material which they can read, or they can go ahead with going through outside of the class. They can also go for watching supplement videos which are referred by the students, by the teachers to the students, or they can even go for solving additional problems. But to engage in flipped learning, teachers must incorporate the four pillars into this practice of running a flipped classroom. What are the four pillars? They come from the word FLIP, flip. We can make an expansion of this FLIP and what exactly they are. The four pillars of flipped learning or flipped classroom can be considered to be: the first word is F, and F stands for flexible environment. Then the L stands for learning culture. I stands for intentional content, and P stands for professional educator. Let us try to see what exactly is the meaning behind these four pillars, what exactly they mean. The first pillar, or the first word which stands for F from the word of flip, that is flexible environment. Flipped learning allows for a variety of learning modes. Educators often physically rearrange their learning spaces to accommodate a topic or a unit or a lesson for the purpose of supporting the group, or maybe in the group learning they are going to support that group, or even in case of independent study being done by an individual student, the support is going to be provided on a particular topic. They create basically flexible spaces in which the student can choose when and where the student is willing to learn. And further, we can also see that the educators who are flipping their classes are flexible in their expectations from the students. And what kind of expectations? The timelines which is given to a student for the learning, and in their assessment. Like once a teaching learning process is happening, automatically the teacher is going to do some assessment to check that what sort of understanding is happening and whether the progress is properly happening or not. So even that can be flexibly done. If we are going ahead with a flipped classroom approach, even the teacher can be flexible in the assessment process for the student learning. So in the flipped classroom, there will be a flexibility of the environment for the student as well as for the teacher. So this is the first term which stands for the letter F, which is flexible environment, and this is the first pillar of flip. The second pillar of flip stands for the word learning culture, which is from the letter L. So L stands for learning culture. What exactly it means? We can see that in the traditional classroom, normally the teacher is teaching and the students are studying. Lecture method or some sort of method is being adopted by the teacher, where you can find that the dominating role is being done by the teacher. So here we can say that it's a teacher-centered model in the traditional classroom. The teacher is the primary source of information. But in this case, in the flipped learning model, we can find a contrast happening. Here, deliberately, there is a shift in the instruction to a to the students, and we can find a learner-centered approach where in class time, basically the class time is dedicated to explore various topics by discussing with the student. Like there can be a discussion happening between the students and the teacher, and a lot of exploration on the topics which are the basically being discussed. You can find a lot of exploration happening in greater depth, and there will be a lot of critical enrichment exercise which is going to be seen here in a flipped classroom approach. So creating rich learning opportunities is basically possible, and as a result the students are actively involved in knowledge construction. Whenever they participate in the process, the entire process, they are going to construct their own knowledge, and the evaluation of their learning will also be done in a very meaningful way. The personalized evaluation is also possible because the entire process is a lot of learner centric. So we can, as a teacher, if we are following this approach, we will be motivating the students to be very active even in the evaluation process. So there is a possibility that self-evaluation or peer evaluation can be done here in this flipped learning mode or the flipped classroom. So L, learning culture, is the second pillar of the flip. And here you can even find the other students giving some sort of scaffold to other students, like peer group teaching or peer group discussions will be happening, and there will be a lot of feedback which can be given to from one student to the other, and that type of discussions will be happening which can be seen to be very enriching, and they create a conducive environment where the discussions itself are the source of learning for the students. So learning culture is the next pillar. The third pillar comes from the letter I, and which stands for intentional content. In a flipped learning or approach, or in this system, educators continuously think about how they can use the flipped learning model to help the students to develop the conceptual understanding, as well as like only not only the conceptual understanding, the procedural fluency, how to follow the process, how to follow the procedure, so that if they become very much apt in doing some sort of, they understand the process or the entire procedure, they will be in a position to go ahead with checking and getting the products. So the information of or the knowledge of the procedure or the process is basically the motto of the providing the knowledge of the process or procedure is can be said to be the motto of the flipped learning model. And here the content which is given to the students, it is intentional content which thrives to provide them the information related to the procedural fluency and also regarding the conceptual understanding. There is a prioritization of concepts which is used in direct instruction for learners to access on their own, how they can go ahead with learning on their own, how they can create, how they can curate relevant content. A set of videos can be given to them, and even they can curate their own videos which are useful for them for learning a particular topic. So a lot of liberty is given to them in form of the content. Even they can select their own content. The teacher is going to assist, the teacher is going to provide, and from the provided material they are in a position, they have got the liberty to select from those which are easier to them for comprehension, and they can even go for those material, those content which are accessible to them. So accessibility is also somehow very kind of important aspect which is provided to the students in terms of providing them the intentional content. So the students basically they determine what they need to teach, like the teachers first determine that what they need to teach and what materials the students should explore on their own. So a little bit of work is to be done beforehand. The script classroom is going to be taken by a teacher, that the teacher will be just having a glance through of all the content, all those videos or all those text material or anything which the teacher, the set of those materials which are to be provided to the students. The teacher herself or himself will go through with that material which she is going to use in the teaching learning process. And these educators, basically the educator here is a teacher, is going to use the intentional content which she has selected from list of a huge list of content. And this intentional content is for the sake of maximizing the classroom time in order to adopt methods to student-centered active learning strategies. So if you have already done the homework earlier, like if a teacher has gone through the content and she has got a video which is very useful, and she has seen that it's a half an hour video, but the important thing or the part which is to be shown or which is very much useful for her students is between the 10th minute till the 15th minute. So this 5 minutes chunk, if the teacher is in a position to splice the video, edit the video, that is also possible. But in case the teacher is not able to make the editing and all, then also she can just mark out that the student has to go ahead with the video, the part of the video which starts from 10 minutes onwards and it runs through the 15th minute. So this 5 minutes chunk is actually useful for the student. So this identification is to be done by the teacher beforehand, and then the teacher can give the content, and there will be a list of content and it will be written beneath or somewhere it will be given the instructions that this video you can go ahead with seeing from 10th minute onwards to 15th minute. The second video you can go ahead for seeing for the 15-minute onwards till the end. So in this way the instructions can also be written, and then the teacher will be providing the list. The students will go through and they will select the better or the best video or one or two videos or any type of content which they found much more easier for comprehension. So here the process becomes somehow a student-centered approach where active learning is happening. So this is a kind of active learning strategy. It depends on the grade or the level and even on the subject matter. So this is the intentional content coming from the letter I, and this is the third pillar of flip. The fourth pillar, which comes from the letter P, stands for the professional educator. What exactly this means? Here, in the flipped classroom approach, the role of a professional educator is very, very important. And in few of the cases, you can find it very, very demanding also, because in a flipped classroom, the role of a teacher is more than the role of a teacher which is there in the traditional classroom. Because in the traditional classroom, the teacher is actually coming and teaching the topic, and it becomes very much teacher centric. But here, the teacher's role is to make the classroom student centric, as well that the intention is to provide them the best learning experience. So that is why, because of this type of role, the professional educator's importance is immense in a flipped classroom. So during the class time, the teacher continually observes the students. How this observation happens? Even if they are going through some content, the teacher will keep an eye and the teacher is going to observe the students. The teacher will provide them with the feedback at the relevant moment. So whenever the process is happening, then only the teacher is going to oversee and the teacher is going to provide them the feedback at that moment only when the process is happening. And even the assessment of their work is going to happen at the same moment. So there will be no any time lapse. Learning is happening, assessment is happening, and also the teacher is checking them in a way when she is in a position to provide feedback. So correction of all those errors, which if they are making any error or if they are making any sort of thing which is undesirable, they can make the correction spontaneously. So the professional educators who are the reflective practitioners, or they they know that how they have to go for their practice, they have to connect, how they have to connect with the student and even with their own peer group, other teachers, for the sake of the improvement of the instruction process. How they can accept the constructive criticism. Here you can follow the word criticism in a way that it's not only a negative, like criticism is, it can't be only negative. It can be a constructive criticism, which is a positive criticism. They have to have some sort of tolerance and they need to control the chaos in their classrooms. So that this type of ability is desired in a 21st century teacher. These professional educators take on less visibly the prominent roles in a flipped classroom. They remain the essential ingredient that enables the flipped learning to happen in a very proper way. So the teacher is an essential part of this flipped classroom where the flipped learning is happening. But she or he is not supposed to be making some sort of dominance. It will be a very conducive environment where the teacher is going to give the feedback spontaneously to the students when the active learning, teaching learning process is happening. She can create a small group, or even she can take care of, like if an individual student is asking for some query or some sort of assistance, even the teacher can give that. Individual feedbacks, group feedbacks can be given in real time whenever they are required. And then the formative assessments, which happen during the class time, that can be done with the help of the observation which the teacher is making. And the teacher can even make a record of the data or some sort of information which she can collect from the students' way of working, which can be a ready reckoner for her in future when once she is making the report card, or maybe she is giving a remark for the future process of learning for a specific student. Even the teacher can collaborate and make a reflection on the student's workability or the abilities which the student is going to have, which is going to be becoming helpful for the future endeavors. So the entire transformational teaching learning process can happen if a professional educator is. So after checking out the four pillars of flip, let us try to understand that what should be the way in which we have to flip a classroom. And before that, we should know that why we should flip our classroom. What are the reasons which can make this endeavor happening? Why are we are going for flipping our classroom rather than going with the traditional approach? So the first point which we can consider here is that flipping speaks the language of today's students, because they are willing to go ahead with some sort of ICT based techniques or maybe some sort of learning which happens beforehand, and once they come to the class uh, with a prepared type of mental setup, they are in a better position to comprehend the topic. Flipping helps all those students who are considered to be busy because they are nowadays having a lot of work to be done. So here in the classroom, they will be discussing and they will be demystifying all those queries. So they will get a little bit of more time with the teacher. Then flipping also helps those students who struggle with the topics and the content, because here, because of the much time, they will be in a better position to solve the queries with the help of the students. They will be in a position uh, to enhance their abilities, which will be helping them to do their excellent progress. Flipping also allows the students to pause and rewind their teacher, because the students can ask the question which are related to that particular material which is given by the teacher. They can refer to that particular point, that why this has happened in that particular content, why that has happened, and then the teacher is going to explain that what was the reason behind. So it will again be a very interactive and active process. It increases the student teacher interaction, it allows the teachers to know their students better, and also increases the student interaction, because in due course of the interaction with the teacher, the students are themselves are going to make a lot of interaction, and they are also going to differentiate between the things which they are studying in a very good way. Classroom management is also possible because a lot of content is already covered beforehand. So it will be easier for a teacher to manage the class, and the time of the class can be managed in a way that is in very less time she can manage a lot of content, delivery of the content and comprehension of the content by the students. Then also how the students are going to interact with the parents, and how the teacher is going to have an outlook with their with the students parents is going to change with this flipping, because here the parents are also going to participate in the teaching learning process, because things are being done at home, and it is going to educate the parents to a certain extent. And also the class is going to become transparent, because the same type of material is being provided to every student. So somehow the input is the same, and every student is having the same chance of going through the content and asking questions and solving their queries. It's a great technique when there is a absence of a teacher, or maybe if the teacher is taking a leave, or somehow there is some sort of difficulty, the student is not finding like the student is going to be absent, or some sort of difficulty is there in both of the cases, then also this technique is becoming proving to be very much useful in both of the situations. And we can even master the skill of flipping, and this is going to be helpful for the student as well as the teachers. How we can implement a flipped classroom, this is again a question, and let us see a few of those steps which were given in the year 2014 by Jeff Dunn. He has given a 6-step guide to flip the classroom, or for flipping the classroom. These 6 very easy steps for the implementation of flipped classroom are going to help you out if you are, as a teacher, if you are going to make this flipped classroom approach happen inside your classroom. And even as a student, you can just get the know-how of how the flipped classroom happen in a normal class. So the first step is plan or planning. We have, as a teacher, we have to figure out which lesson is particularly taken or chosen for flipping. You want to flip the lesson in a way where you are going to use this lesson in your flipped classroom. You have to outline the key of learning outcomes, and also you have to make a jotting down of the lesson plan. So the plan is the first step, and normally this is the first step in any of the classes, in any of the processes. Second step is recording or record. So instead of teaching this lesson personally or in person, what we can do, we can make a video, or we can make a presentation which we can make like we can screencast, or we can just make a recording of that particular lesson, and we can make sure that it contains all the key elements which you would mention in the classroom, which you wanted to mention in the classroom. But you should not make a video just for the sake of making a video. See, if it is not required, if the topic is not requiring a video, then you should not go for it. So only you have to go for, as a teacher, you have to go for creating a video if you feel that that will be the appropriate material which for providing to your students. So if it is necessary, then only you should go for making a video. And it all depends on the educational goal of your particular topic which you have selected. If you are making a video, then that particular topic, if it is requiring, it is going to facilitate better your instructions, your instructional goals, your learning outcomes, and you feel that making a video is going to help you to achieve the learning outcomes, then you should go for it and you can make a video. So this is the second step, where you do a recording if it is required. And then third step is sharing. In this stage, or in this step, you have to send this video which you have created to your students, and you have to also write the instruction that what exactly is to be done by this video. You have to make the video, as a teacher, very interesting and very engaging, and you have to also write the clear-cut remarks that you have to go through the video, and there will be a discussion which will be happening in the classroom. The class will begin with the discussion and all. So explain that video's content, and you will be discussing that video content in the classroom next day. So share it. This is sharing is the third step. Then the fourth step is change. What exactly this means? So what is happening now, or what would be happened like right now after you have shared the video, that the student would have gone through, and their view on that particular lesson would have changed. Now they have got some sort of understanding, some sort of preparedness, which will allow them to ask you questions, to go in depth to that particular topic. Then, because they will be in a position to know some sort of information related to, to that topic, so they will be in a better position to ask questions, to go deeper than the position in which they were before. So you will find a kind of substantial change in the students. Then the next step can be observed to be grouping. So this is an effective way to discuss the topic, and this can be done in separate groups. You can make small groups of students, and you can ask them to discuss first what they have seen in the video, what they have observed in the video. So in the small groups, they will discuss. You can even ask them to write the excerpts, or kind of summary, or whatever they have visualized after seeing that video. So they can even write it down on a piece of paper before discussing it with you. Between the discussion which is happening inside the group, they will make a kind of jotting down, which is again going to help the students to work in group. That group dynamics is going to develop in your students, and they will uh, better understand the parts of the videos. There is a possibility that one student has understood the topic in a better way, so that student is going to explain the other students, and in this way they will be in a position to understand it better, and at the time of discussion with you, they will be in a better position to ask. Then the next step is to regroup. In this step, you can get the class back together to share the individual groups work with everyone. And now they will be asked to stand, like a group leader can be asked to stand up and present that what their particular group has discussed and they have written down. And then these groups are going to ask questions to the teacher, and they can dive deeper. There can be cross discussions between the groups. So this type of activity can happen, and in this way we can implement the flipped classroom. So after the 6 steps of implementation are done, what we can do next, we can go for review, revise, and repeat. These are some other strategies that can be used in the class activities. What are these activities? The first activity in terms of the review, revise, and repeat is active learning. Active learning allows the students to apply concepts in class where they can ask their students, like their other peer group members or instructors, for feedback and clarification. So the students can ask other students and they can actually discuss among them, and it will be an active learning process which is happening, and the teacher is giving the feedback to to make the clarifications. Then peer instruction, peer group learning is also happening. The students can teach each other by explaining the concepts or working on small problems. Collaborative learning is also happening because they are making collaborations. Collaborative learning activities, uh, basically they are in a position to increase the student engagement, enhance the student understanding, and promote the collective intelligence, because here all the students are collaborating, like they are working in group. They are helping each other for the process of learning. Problem-based learning. Here, the class time can be spent working on solving the problem, and this type of class can actually last for a section, like for a broader time span of the semester, so that what happens that they become very comfortable in solving their own problems, and at some point of time they will be in a position to identify a problem, go ahead with checking out that what can be done to solve the problem, and they will be in a position to solve their problems which are based on the content, the curriculum which they are exposed to. The next point can be the discussions or debates which are happening in terms of making the class, these class activities. Here the students are doing a lot of discussion, debates are happening, and the students are getting the opportunity to articulate their thoughts on the spot, on the same time. When the thought is coming to them, they are actually expressing those thoughts. There will be constructive arguments in support of the uh, opinions, or against. There would be conflict of thoughts, but these conflicts, these type of arguments are going to help them out to develop their communication skills, and even their logical thinking, their critical thinking, and all those important aspects which we wish to develop in our students. So we have just seen the flipped learning and flipped classroom approaches. Let us try to just have a quick recap of whatever we have studied today. Flipped learning is a pedagogical approach in which direct instruction moves from the group learning space to the individual learning space, and the resulting group space is transformed into a kind of active, dynamic, interactive learning environment where the teacher or the educator guides the students as they apply the concepts which are being taught to them, and they are engaged in the creativity or the subject in a very creative way. We can distinguish between the flipped classroom and flipped learning approaches. They are not synonymous, or they cannot be used interchangeably. But because flipping a class can, but does not necessarily lead to the flipped learning. Many teachers may already flip their classes by having the students supposed to read the text outside of class. They can watch and like provide them some material or video which is to be seen by them, or solve asking the students to solve some additional problems. But here in this process of flipped learning, the students are engaged by the teachers, and the teachers must incorporate those four pillars into their practice, which we just have talked about. The pillars, which are the flexible environment, the learning culture, the intentional content, and the professional educator, which actually constitute the entire flipped learning environment. And they help the teacher as well as the students to liberate them for making a better and active environment in the teaching learning process. It is very much helpful. It follows certain steps, and uh, the steps are also leading us towards various processes which enhance the entire environment of teaching learning process, and it becomes a constructive way in which we can take up a class. So we can say that it's a very growing and kind of approach which can be adapted by us in the classrooms. ICT can be the application, or it can be an assistance which can be provided to the teachers when they are willing to flip their classroom or flip their learning. These are few of those references and the links which were used for creating the lecture. You can also go ahead for studying more. Let us see each other in another session another time. Thank you so much for this time. Dear students, you were watching a video on the teaching learning strategies and materials, and here we discussed about flipped learning and flipped classroom. This video lecture was recorded by faculty at home during the homebound situation of COVID-19 pandemic using minimal technical resources. Technical errors, if any, are unintentional and may please be ignored. For any queries with regard to this lecture or broadcast, kindly send your email to techsupport@dth.ac.in. Thank you so much.